Welcome to Amherst Media. I'm Jim Lesko, and I'll be your host today. I'm very pleased to have with us today in the studio, starting her second year as president of Amherst College, President Biddy Martin. Welcome, Biddy, to Amherst Media.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And thank you for taking your time out from your busy schedule. I realize that it's a lot running a college. You've been elected the 19th president of Amherst back in June of 2011. Previously, you served as chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Madison since 2008, and before that at Cornell University from 2000 to 2008, in that role as provost, I believe.
Provost, yeah.
You're also known as a distinguished scholar in German literature and studies, and author of numerous articles and 2 books. And I believe I just saw where you were elected to the Academy of Arts. Is that correct?
I was, yeah. I'm honored to have been elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
a very big honor. You were raised in rural Campbell County, Virginia?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And that's what, near Lynchburg?
It's near Lynchburg. It was about 10 miles, I think, outside the city limits when we were growing up.
Okay. And I've read where you have been quoted as saying that your family didn't think higher education was necessarily a thing for girls. Do you want to explain that to us, or try to...
I always wished I could explain it to you. No. Yeah, I grew up in a family where the discussions we had when I was younger had to do with, first of all, whether my parents could afford to send my brother and me, my older brother and me, to college, and whether it really was important for girls to go to college or not, and they were not persuaded. At one point, they, I think, were convinced that perhaps a state teachers college or something of that sort might be appropriate. But I had the great good fortune of having great teachers and advisors in high school who advocated on my behalf with my parents, and I eventually ended up at William and Mary.
Now, William and Mary was not their idea. That was leaving the area completely, wasn't it? Or a great
That's
distance?
right. It was 3 hours away, and in their view, that was tantamount to leaving
Right.
the area. And William and Mary was a place where they didn't feel comfortable, and so they didn't spend a lot of time there. But, you know, to their credit, I ended up going there, and they supported it in the ways they could, and I got a great education.
So I saw where you started in 1969 in college?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So for most people out there, they know that the late 1960s going into the 70s was a very tumultuous period. We were
Right.
coming out of the civil rights movement. We had an anti-war movement going on.
Yes.
A lot of changes and challenges, if you will, of society overall.
Right.
How did that become became a part of your university college experience?
Absolutely.
And how
yeah,
did that
that's
formulate you?
It's a great question. When I went off to William and Mary, having come from a very, let's say, conservative family, all of the political and economic events of the period were coming to a head, as you just said. And one of the things I remember now with some amusement, though at the time it wasn't so amusing, was my parents' decision that they would call me regularly to make sure I wasn't taking part in any protests, that I wasn't cutting classes, because William and Mary, despite its location, was a place that was quite active in anti-war and civil rights politics, and did have a class boycott in the summer of 70, I think, the spring of 70. And I was, in fact, failing to go to my math class, some of my other classes.
Thank you for your honesty.
There you are, and that became a source of tension. It also obviously was the beginning, not the beginning, but an important extension of my learning to think for myself, and also my understanding of what that might mean in relation to a family that really considered loyalty to the mores and norms of the family to be the highest value.
Then in many examples, I come from a working class family
Yeah.
in a city where the first to go on to college, there was usually a lot of tension if the parents had not attended any
Yeah.
higher education, and still is to this day with
Yes.
Latino families in Holyoke and other immigrant groups or immigrant groups. But there is tension. There is
Yeah.
that sense of loss of family experiences, or I don't want to supersede what
That's
my
right.
parent had achieved.
Yes.
Was that part of what you were experiencing in your own?
Yes, absolutely. I know that experience well. It is an experience of loss. And as I've said often to students at Amherst, learning is also a process of unlearning. And unlearning can be as painful at times as it is exhilarating. And it leads you in places that can put you at odds with family or with friends or with your former selves. And that's something that becomes ultimately part of what it means to be whoever you are. But one should not be deluded into thinking that education is just the fun addition of new knowledge. It's really about a transformative experience. One of the things I love about Amherst, given its history, given its selectivity, is that I think a little over 15% of our incoming class are first generation college students. 42% of the students identify as students of color. 10% are international from all over the world. It's the most diverse campus on which I've ever served. And so the kinds of questions you're asking about my background and about yours are questions that are really essential to Amherst students. And I think it's important to talk about them.
So when you say diversity, you're not just referring to ethnicity, you're
That's
talking
right.
about
Socioeconomic class. I mean, what Amherst has done that I admired, and it's one of the things that brought me here, is put its money where its mouth is. That is, you know, it was founded as a college for the indigent. And Amherst spends so much money on financial aid that it's able to have a no loans policy for its students who are on aid, which means that when we create a package of financial aid for students who warrant aid, we don't package any loans. If students graduate with any debt from Amherst, it's simply debt that they may have borrowed independently or their family might have for extras. But to pay for their education, they don't need to take out loans, so they don't graduate with the debt that a lot of students are now.
Well, let's go there a little
Yeah.
bit further than that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a beautiful thing.
It is.
And it's one that it would be great if, or some of the university and college, I think, offer that, but very few.
Right.
You're in a 5-college area with thousands every year graduating in highly trained and specialized fields, yet not being able to even get entry-level jobs at McDonald's. So, and then carrying that debt, these are non-Amherst college students.
Right.
How does a country deal with that in a higher education way? What is? I know if we had the answer, we would both be
I
on
know.
television shows.
I think you and I should try to come up with the magic bullet and then go around and sell it. There is no immediate, quick, easy answer. I think all of us would like to be able to say there is one and we're just not implementing it. The truth is it's a genuine conundrum. Public universities have had to raise tuition as state tax money shrinks to higher ed, and they don't have a long history of raising private money for financial aid. So they're in a position right now where they're not yet at the point where charitable giving covers what the loss in state tax dollars has created as a vacuum. A lot of public universities are working hard on that, but it will take time. And the privates are steadily raising tuition at a slower rate than they once were, because these are very labor-intensive industries, and it's very difficult not to have costs increase if you want outstanding teachers and scholars, if you want a dedicated staff, if you want a student-faculty ratio that really, at a place like Amherst, really provides for the students a learning environment in which they are being challenged to think critically, to become who they are in relation to adults and scholars and scientists. So there's no easy answer. Over time, things will change. They are already changing. There's more collaboration between and among institutions. The 5-college consortium is a good example of that. We can cut costs by working together and sharing infrastructure systems. I think there'll be more even academic collaboration across the country among institutions, and I think online learning will help in some sectors. The quality of online learning will increase, and more people will have access to it. A place like Amherst wants and ought to, I think, continue to provide what it has always provided. Its niche is human scale, the best possible intellectual environment, academic rigor, intense interactions between faculty and students, students and other students, staff and students and faculty, a genuine intellectual community where those people who have the aptitude and the interest can get the kind of education that to some people now might seem almost like a throwback. Right. It's a good throwback. Yeah. One of the things I said in my inauguration address last year that I really believe is that I fear a world without its Amhersts. And that doesn't mean everyone wants, needs, should have an Amherst education, but we need our Amhersts.
Need that option.
We need that option, yeah.
One of the, I was thinking of the big picture, which is so many people out there with wondering what to do. I mean, the youth, the number of youth out there that are educated. Yes. And do they go further in debt to get into the master program and continue on that treadmill, which many should go into? I mean, there is that possibility of federal programs to give back, to defer. And I don't think we've gone far enough as a country. That's just one option that I think we just aren't willing to take it away from the banking industry and say this is a right. Education is a right. And so
well, and it's a right, and it's the right investment for the nation. Exactly. It's not an obligation. I think it has to be seen as an investment in the future. And one of the things that concerns me about the country and the culture of it, in at least some pockets, is people don't seem to have a sense anymore of commitment to the future, to future generations. And if we don't invest in future generations, there won't be a future for any of us. So I agree with you. I think the federal government has to do what it can, and even in a time of great economic pressure, to support young people. I think more students will choose to do the kinds of things that Amherst is also interested in pursuing. That is to say, going to colleges or community colleges that are close to home for a year or two, and often transferring to places like Amherst. We actively seek transfers from community colleges. So I think there are ways in the short term for at least some of our families to think about less expensive ways to get their children the best possible education. But it's a crunch time. It's a really difficult time for everybody. The final thing I would say about students with debt, there's debt and debt, in my view. Okay. If you think about students who might graduate with, say, $10,000 in debt, or 15 or even 20, which is, I think, around the national average, that's a lot of debt right now with an 8+% unemployment rate. In better times, however, a lot of young people will graduate from college and spend that much on a loan for a car. Which is the better investment if you're talking about should one go into debt? My answer is some debt is worth it because it's an investment that the data shows continues to pay off over the long haul. But too much debt is too much debt. And the students that we read about in the papers who are graduating with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, or graduating from law and medical schools with $100,000 in debt, I don't know how anyone contends with that.
And then aside, my first car was $300, and you can't find a car for $300 when you're coming out of high school anymore, for sure.
No.
But I agree with you. It's the priorities, and it's also that instantaneous gratification we as a society wants.
Yes.
The investment isn't tomorrow. It's not the next year. We're investing in generations.
Yes.
And I don't think we've done that for a while now. If I may, you've also brought up poetry as a love of poetry, but also you use it in a way of describing Amherst. And do you want to share that with us?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, thank you for the question. Well, as you well know, and everyone in Amherst knows, Amherst College and Amherst as a town are both associated with great poetry and great poets. And what a wonderful thing. So in addition to the natural beauty of the place, there's a long history of vigorous intellectual and artistic activity. And I mean, what could be better about a place? I love poetry. I've always found it compelling. You know, it's a way of condensing language and meaning, and it yields an experience then for the reader or the listener that requires a certain kind of attention that I love. So you mentioned earlier that the culture, the pace of things in the culture as a whole has reached a level that we wonder whether we can bear. We certainly can bear it. We can even adapt to it. But there's a need for the kind of spaces that I would call poetic spaces, and I think Amherst College is a poetic space. It's a quality of attention that people pay to one another. It's a love of natural beauty and of the contemplative as at least part of the experience. Correct. And that's something I really love about being here.
And as you're rightfully to mention a few of the famous poets that you have archives of within your colleges.
Yes.
The Robert Frost collection
Frost,
and the Wilbur
Dickinson,
collection.
Richard Wilbur, yes.
So I mean, we're also very lucky about that, and also your relationship with the Folger. I mean, that's another huge. And I'd love to talk to you about how could we as a community hear more of those readings up here and maybe get the community to benefit here from some of those wonderful poets that read down in D.C. And
well, you know, that's a great idea. And I think, and that's what you're saying, that our connection with the Folger could be closer. And we're actually having the relatively new director of the Folger, Michael Whitmore, come up to Amherst this fall to talk about how the relationship could be strengthened and how we could integrate things more effectively. So let's make sure you know about
or
his
you may
visit.
want to have him in here and let us know what
that
your
would be a
findings
great
are.
idea.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Before we get too far along, I wanted you've been running huge institutions in different capacities, all right? And you know, and I'm just bewildered by the thought of that, and that you've had such glowing responses everywhere you've been, from Cornell and what you did there with both in capital improvement, but also faculty expansion and also financial aid. Then what Madison, you did an amazing collaboration with the state and the local to make that university more responsive to the needs of the students. So I congratulate you on that, and I know there's personal traits and characteristics. What do you point to for your own personal strengths that allow you to go into these situations and have so much success?
Oh, well, first, thank you for the compliments. I hope I deserve them. And I hope that I will have made a positive difference in every institution I've served. That's certainly my goal. So what qualities? I think, you know, as is true for all of us, it's partly the way I was raised, the value that my family placed on working hard and also doing well. It was a very competitive group. Athletics was the platform for all that competition. My older brother was a football coach. My younger brother was an assistant coach. It was like the show Friday Night Lights. You know, the only thing that mattered in the area was high school football. And so there's a limitation in that. But I think there's a lot to be learned from athletics, too, and I think I really learned them. I myself was a basketball player in high school.
I hear you had a few records to your own.
Only one record.
What was that?
I held the record for a while at my high school for most points scored.
You've been superseded by now?
I've been superseded, yeah.
Well, congratulations for that period of time.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, actually, I really do think the experience of teamwork and hard work and just the love of working with people and getting things done probably account for whatever success I've had.
Well, I agree. I think there's your personality. Obviously, you're full of light, and that deep listening skill and the ability. I think you've already shown your humor in the short time that you've been here. I think those are things that institutions sometimes lack the ability to do, and the human touch. So I do think that you deserve everything I've read about and from what
thank
people have
you.
written about you, and I look forward to hopefully working even more closely with you through the Amherst experience.
Good, and by the
Speaking-
way, thank you for taking on our students as you do, and the students from the other institutions as interns.
Well, we
It's a
wouldn't
great
be
opportunity.
half of what we are today if we didn't, and
Yeah.
we love having them here. And they actually, they're bringing in more of the faculty to our facilities too,
Yeah.
so that we're being
Great.
recognized for what we're capable of doing and
Good.
offering. So thank you.
Yeah.
You have a lot of programs that you oversee. I mean, you're the little institution with a lot going on here in the heart of Amherst.
Yeah.
And both in running fiscal places such as the Emily Dickinson House,
Right.
the Lord Jeffrey. There's those in town that feel like, well, they could do more to help the town given,
Yeah.
what they have. But you do have some programs that are very integrated. We were the benefits of one this summer, and
Right.
an intern paid by the college to work with us, Brianda Reyes, who helped launch our civic journalism. And
Yeah.
we're very thankful for her, and we look for her coming back, look forward to her coming back. But you have other programs, I know, with the school system. Do you want to talk about some of the things that you see out there that you
Yeah.
want to expand or continue?
Well, we certainly want to continue, and we're going to be going through a planning process over the next year, year and a half, in which one of the questions we'll ask ourselves is how we extend our reach in the local community and beyond, even internationally. I think the Center for Community Engagement, which is probably the center through which you
Yeah.
got the internship, is relatively new and doing wonderful work, and it's becoming more and more integrated into the fabric of the college as a whole. I look for that to be even more useful to Amherst and the surrounding regions as it grows and flourishes. My view about the biggest contribution that a college like Amherst makes to a community is people. There certainly are financial contributions, and as you probably know, though we're a tax-free institution overall, we do have we have exempt lands and properties on which we pay taxes in support of the town and the region. But I think it's the faculty, it's the employment of our staff, it's those students we bring from all over the United States and the world that are probably the college's greatest gift to Amherst. And if we can do more to get those people who are so dedicated not just to the college, but to doing good for others and being part of a community in which they can contribute, I think the community would benefit, and so would we. Anything we do in the community is first and foremost, really, in my view, a benefit to Amherst and to the people who do it. It's not Amherst helping Amherst College helping Amherst. It should be a reciprocal benefit and a mutual help. So I think that's a discussion that will be part of the planning we do. And yes, we have some relationships with the schools, obviously. A couple of really interesting and unique programs, and we make contributions, and I'm proud of that.
Well, there's obviously so much to contribute. It's such a vibrant community in the intellectual sense and in the giving sense. And I think your program that was instituted a couple years ago, Molly Mead heads up, is very important to the greater community, not just Amherst, but the southern tier of the Connecticut River Valley, the Springfields, the Hollyoaks. So thank you and the college for doing that. I think it's extremely important. I have a question. I know we're getting close to the end, and you're the first woman, okay, to be, and you're in, and that's been made a lot of. But I've read where you've kind of said, well, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's true for this sake, not for, it doesn't identify me per se in my presidency, but it's for others. And do you want to explain what you mean by that?
What do you mean by that? What do I mean by that? I think it's different, obviously, for me, having always been a woman and having done jobs of this sort and having enjoyed them so much. For Amherst, it's significant because I'm the first woman president. And therefore, it's significant to me, too, to be the first woman president of Amherst. But it's not salient in my day-to-day life, because I think even though people are excited to have a woman president, it's not as though I'm working against the grain of some sort of resistance to that. If I am, I've certainly not been aware of it. So it's not something that on a daily basis affects the way I approach my work. Now, at a deep level, of course it affects the way I do my work, that I'm a woman, that I've had the experiences I've had, that I have the attachments and affinities I have, but that's true of everybody. So how does that work its way out? I think other people would have to say what difference they think it makes to have a woman president who is Biddy Martin. It's not something I can kind of proclaim, if you know what I mean.
And it's also a model for many people that might have thought that wasn't a possibility.
That, I think, is the most important part of it, definitely. Anything that I do, that you do, that anyone else does, that shows young people that there are options that they might not otherwise have imagined is a great thing, and makes me proud then to be in that role. I mean, you said you come from a working class environment. You know, there are, the biggest problem I think in my background and in the backgrounds of a lot of people is the absence of imagination. That is, the suppression of imagination, not the absence in the people of imagination, the suppression of it, or, you know, a way of defending oneself, at least in my family, might have been to say something like, we're not even going to consider that that would be possible for us. Don't get your hopes up. Don't get, you know, don't start thinking that this or that is possible. I think we just have an obligation to young people to show them that for anybody from any background, with luck and help and support, they can do whatever they set out to do.
It's definitely a good message, and the low-bearing fruit aren't the only ones on the tree, so we should have high expectations of ourselves and for our young people especially.
Yeah.
But just for the audience to know, the first two women who applied to the Amherst College was back in 1871.
You know, I was rereading Consecrated Eminence, and I was reminded of that.
And then your first time that women were faculty was in the 70s, 76 or something like that?
Yeah.
75? So, I mean, it's been relatively new for that institution to women not only as participating into the student body and faculty, but now you're at the top of the administrative, and I wish you only success in the college, and I really do appreciate you being here. And again, I extend our warmest welcome and to our facilities any way it can help you in the future.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.